First time you move to Austin, you might say, "What is that smell?" And then you'll hear longtime Austin residents say, "That's the smell of money." That's the first thing that I heard. It's long been a source of jokes, and then there's concern. To be honest, there are times when Austin doesn't smell the greatest, but that might be changing. Tonight, ABC 6 News reporter Dan Conrad gives us the smell test.
Awful. Awful. Absolutely awful.
It's long been part of life in a meatpacking town.
And the smell was nauseating.
But these days, there are changes in the air.
Unquestionably, the Austin situation with air emissions is much better. We've put in state-of-the-art technology.
And RTO stands for Regenerative Thermal Oxidizer.
Nearly 3 years ago, Hormel Foods announced a voluntary $25 million plan to change its impact on Austin's air.
We know that the RTO burns at 1,350 degrees minimum, and we know as long as we stay above that temperature, then we're incinerating 99.9% of all those volatile organic compounds.
Emitting carbon dioxide, essentially fresh air.
We had this technology already in operation at another facility, so we knew the technology worked.
In addition to the RTO incinerator, Hormel built a new fully contained rendering complex.
The old rendering complex wasn't. In other words, there were a number of times throughout the year and throughout the day that we would have doors open. We would have to have doors open in order to get trucks in and out. That's not the case anymore.
You couldn't sit out on the back deck. You'd go out and you just about gagged.
So we know from an operational standpoint it's working, and we've got controls to make sure that stays in place.
If you really wanted to quantify it, you'd have to ask the neighbors.
So we did.
We've been waiting for it to change, but it hasn't.
Some neighbors say it has.
The last few years, I don't smell that anymore. And you really can tell the difference.
It's very strong, especially when the wind is blowing a certain way. But if they'd like to come to my house, they can.
It wasn't a scientific survey, but we randomly stopped 13 people living in neighborhoods around the Hormel plant and asked what they thought. They didn't want to go on camera, but 8 of them said they think the air smells better. 5 said it smells about the way it always has.
And now you can ride your bikes along there, ride the bike paths, and it's very pleasant.
It will never go away, but it is there. It is truthfully there.
Maybe that's just part of life in a meatpacking town.
And I've actually had some people smell bacon and actually complain about that.
You know, there were some days you smelled bacon, which was awesome.
You will get that odor occasionally. And again, I mentioned the livestock odor. We will get complaints periodically from people that smell livestock.
Some of the people we talked to said you eventually get used to the smell when you live in Austin. But consider the case of Judy Enright's grandson, who doesn't.
Every time we drove into Austin, he'd say, "Grandma, Austin stinks. It smells. I don't like it." And this year he came down, spent 3 weeks here, and he said, "Grandma, it doesn't smell anymore."
Dan Conrad, ABC 6 News.